Welcome back to Things You Don't Know, where we take a purposefully ignored history and bring it out in the open.
Dr. Weaver, I would like to take a minute here first to pay tribute to somebody that we unfortunately lost Friday of last week, Friday morning, January 30th, 2026. African American actor Demond Wilson passed away in his home due to cancer on Friday, January 30th, 2026, peacefully, according to his son. And I just have to say, this really saddens me because I grew up watching this guy on Sanford and Son as Lamont pretty much all my life. And he really was a fixture in my life. And he got his start way back before Sanford and Son in the black theaters, in the Chitlin circuit, back in the segregated theaters with actors like Dr. Maya Angelou and Cicely Tyson. He was among the iconic actors. And Dr. Deneen, I truly have to say, he will be definitely missed among all.
You're quite correct, Chandler. I also enjoyed those programs. I admired his philanthropic work in his later years and his service as a elder in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. An amazing man, a giant, and a great leader. Now, getting back to our topic here, you had something to say about that, Chandler.
Yes, I did. Tonight, I'm not coming to you just as a host on this podcast. Oh, no, no. I'm coming to you as a black man who grew up learning fragments of his own history in February only just to watch it just disappear for the rest of the year. Just bye bye, like it never even happened.
That is truly tragic as a historian and as a person with an exceptionality. I share your frustration, but I think if we talk about Black History Month, where it came from, why it exists, why it remains necessary, we can expand that vision a little longer and share it not only with the rest of the calendar year, but with the world around us.
So, today, in honor of February, we're talking about Black History Month, how it began, why it exists, and why it remains necessary. So, in this episode, we're going to do three rather large things. First, we're going to trace the origins of Black History Month and the conditions that made it necessary. Examine what it was meant to correct, preserve, and protect. Another is that we're going to ask what Black History Month reveals about power, memory, and belonging. Let's get started with a clarification that matters.
Yes, I want to stress here that Black history was never missing. Black History Month didn't start because Black history was missing. It started because it was simply just ignored, just simply just passed over. No, la di da, on purpose.
That's very true, Chandler. Exactly. That history existed. C.R. Caesar Drake, Harry Washington, and Viola Desmond podcast for just three examples. It was lived, it was recorded and remembered. It just wasn't centered in a white dominated society.
Exclusion isn't absence, it's a choice.
Oh, you damn right it is. And I'm going to tell you something. Growing up black, you actually feel that choice very early in life. Yeah, you do. You notice whose stories are told without explanation and whose need justification just to be included at all.
Black History Month emerges as a response to that stereotyping and imbalance.
Now, let's start at the very beginning. I think that's a very good place to start. Let's start with Carter G. Woodson. And folks, I cannot overstate. I can't overstate it. Just exactly how personal his mission really was.
Dr. Woodson was born in 1875 to parents who had been enslaved. He understood firsthand how history is used to define identity and worth.
He recognized that if Black people were written out of history, they could be written out of citizenship, humanity, and opportunity.
And as a black man, that really hits hard. That's just a slap right in the face because you realize that history isn't just about the past. No, but it's about who's allowed to claim the future.
As we often say in our boots on the ground history, past, present, and future are equally as important and commingle with each other. In 1915, Dr. Woodson co founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History to preserve Black scholarship outside white institutions. Now, let's take a moment, friends. Look at the context. It's 1915. Woodrow Wilson has just resegregated most Washington employment. Dr. Booker T. Washington, the great leader of the post Civil War era, has just passed. But many terrible things are going on in the United States, North and South. The film Birth of a Nation is brilliantly technologically filmed, but has terrible ideas and a vile message. Through it, lynching is relaunched, and the Ku Klux Klan is brought out of history's pages to rain terror on everybody. The new NAACP is an organization trying to fight lynching, trying to create segregated schools in places where there are no schools at all on a shoestring budget. A. Philip Randolph, the great civil rights leader, is trying to provide some protection against the exploitation of largely African American Pullman porters who work ungodly hours for next to no money. Dr. Woodson understands that in order to change the status of African American people, we must change the image of the community within the larger American society. He spends a decade consulting and studying with scholars and businessmen all over the country.
Now, Dr. Deneen, you mentioned Pullman porters and Philip Randolph. African Americans back in the day, the Pullman porters, they were very important and they were also very big African American occupations. That was a big African American occupation. And Philip Randolph, what he was trying to do was basically protect that and shield that from being stereotyped or ridiculed in some ways. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Weaver?
Yes, indeed. If you said Pullman Porter, you immediately thought Black back in those days. And
Exactly.
that continued right on up through the 70s, at least.
So in 1926, after 10 years of almost unending work, Dr. Woodson launched what was then called Negro History Week.
Yeah, just 1 week. Now, not because that was enough, because it was survivable.
And he chose the second week in February to align with Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln.
And if I have to say so myself, that was pretty smart of him. He met the country where it already was and expanded from there.
This wasn't about celebration, ladies and gentlemen. It was about correction of all sorts of stereotypes and limitations.
And what Dr. Woodson was pushing back against, well, it wasn't ignorance, it was miseducation. There's a big difference there.
Yet textbooks that portrayed Black people as passive, inferior, or just kind of absent.
Present only as enslaved labor or domestic servants after the end of slavery, never as thinkers, physicians, lawyers, or builders.
And growing up black, man, you really notice how that just screws with your identity. If your people are only showing up in chains, then what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to imagine for yourself?
Woodson argued that this distortion harmed democracy itself.
It certainly did because it devalued genuine struggles and genuine contributions from people of African descent.
I want to turn our attention now to how this became from being just a 1 week thing to an entire movement. Over time, that 1 week couldn't hold everything, could it, Dr. Deneen?
No, it couldn't, especially as black communities expanded the scope of their own churches, their own cultural and political organizations, and even their own schools.
During the civil rights movement, historical knowledge became fuel.
And knowing your history wasn't academic, it was strictly survival, folks. Strictly survival. It told you that resistance had precedent, that brilliance wasn't new, and that dignity was not borrowed.
In 1976, Negro History Week, at the suggestion of Transportation Secretary William Coleman, an African American himself, friend of President Ford's, and a confidant of Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, officially became Black History Month.
During the US bicentennial, I think is when that happened, right?
That's exactly right, Dr. Weaver. And you know what I have to say? That's quite ironic, seeing as how America was like, oh, we're celebrating 200 years. Yeah. Uh huh. While at the same time, they're finally admitting, oh, yeah, we left people out of that story. Good stuff, right? Just wonderful.
President Gerald Ford calls upon Americans to recognize an infinite number of Black contributions so long overlooked.
Yeah, that's just so sweet. Overlooked is just such a polite word, man. Aw. But acknowledgement, it matters in this case. It wasn't overlooked, it was just purposely left out just because. People ask every year, why do we still need Black History Month?
Well, because the structural reasons it was created haven't really disappeared.
Not at all. Black history, like the history of so many groups, is still treated as optional, an academic side dish in many curricula.
And as a black person, you feel that. Doesn't feel too good. Your history gets framed as a special topic, not a foundational one.
Until inclusion is automatic, the month remains necessary.
And here's another whole issue that we have to contend with. People also think that Black History Month is only about suffering. That's not true.
No, slavery becomes the whole blinking story.
And that's only a small part of things, terrible as it is. You know what that does? It erases joy, innovation, art, science, spirituality, and intellectual tradition, and promotes what psychologists call learned helplessness.
Now, let me be clear. Yes, Black history does include pain. Yes, it does. And I don't want to diminish that at all. But it's not defined by it. You can't let that define it. It's about resilience, creation, humor, faith, rebellion, and brilliance.
Reducing it to trauma is another form of erasure, actually.
Yes, and it's another slap in the face because history, it's power.
And those who control memory control moral and political legitimacy.
Black History Month interrupts that control.
Yes, it does, and I think it's good because it forces our country to look at itself honestly, at least for just a moment. Now, this question always shows up, and as a black man, it tells me everything.
Because whiteness has always been the default narrative.
It's never been excluded from the history books.
And Black History Month exists because universality was selective. This isn't about exclusion, it's strictly about balance.
Accuracy, not favoritism.
It's also about people being able to define their own experiences. There's an African saying that I think is very important here. One of the anti-apartheid leaders, Stephen Biko, said to some white liberals, "The best you want for us is to be allowed to sit at your table with your china, and if we use it the way you do, you will allow us to stay. We want to wipe the whole table clean and make our own identity." That at the core, what this is saying is that the commonality of the American experience is universal, but we don't want to pretend that it only happened to one group of people. There are myriads of people, and African Americans more than anybody else, made invaluable contributions to the country that need to be recognized and celebrated.
Dr. Deneen, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, I want to turn our attention now to the education of Black History Month versus the performance aspect of it. If we're not careful, there is a big risk of turning this month into a performance rather than using it for education and inspiration purposes.
Yeah, surface level celebration without substance, in other words.
Dr. Woodson warned against that. He wanted a scholarship, not slogans. My good friend, Dr. Samuel Proctor, see our podcast about him, once said that lived experience is more valuable than all of the propaganda imagery in the world. We need to tell a better story, a broader story, not to sugarcoat things, not to make them seem overly sympathetic, but to create a framework for the expression of reality.
Absolutely, Dr. Deneen. And posters, well, they're fine. But if they replace depth, then we have missed the point entirely. Don't you think so, Dr. Weaver and Dr. Deneen?
Quite
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I do, and it's a good point that you're making.
Well, thank you. But this is the truth, but it's the truth that I wish didn't need repeating.
Yeah, you cannot separate Black history from American history. It just is not possible to have
No, and
an
you shouldn't even be
accurate
allowed to try.
You're quite correct.
because it's
Polit-
inaccurate, it's incomplete.
it certainly is. Economically, politically, culturally, and socially, Black Americans from the very beginning, from the colonial periods, shaped the nation.
Black History Month exists simply because that fact was denied, minimized, or just, let's just call it what it is, simply avoided altogether. Now, Black History Month makes some people uncomfortable.
Yeah, because it disrupts innocence narratives.
It forces people, as it should, to ask and answer hard questions about progress, limitation, and accountability.
Well, as a black person, I'm just going to say this right out in front. Discomfort isn't oppression, it's learning. Ideally, Black History Month would not need to exist.
Because Black history would already be fully integrated into our corporate history.
It's naive to say progress hasn't been made, but we're not there yet.
No, we're not. But until that does happen, the month is a reminder and a refusal to disappear.
Yeah, Black History Month endures because memory requires defense.
And let's face facts, ladies and gentlemen, history doesn't preserve itself. We all have an obligation to do that.
And as long as these stories are erased, then retelling them is an act of justice. And not only is it an act of justice, may I say that I feel that it is in a way our duty to keep these things out in the open.
I couldn't agree more.
Studying Black History Month is studying how truth survives exclusion.
It's also about how remembering itself changes who gets to belong. We hope you've enjoyed and been a little outraged by this, folks. Leave us a like and a comment. Come back soon. Goodbye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Remember to do something special for Black History Month. At least read something, remember.
Absolutely. And I hope this episode has kind of gotten you riled up a little bit. And honestly, I hope it has inspired you because I'm going to encourage you to please take the information that we have talked about, look it up. Not only look it up, please expand on that knowledge. Don't just let this information disappear again. Keep it keep it going and keep it out in the open. Come back soon, folks. Bye for now.